Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today we're going to be discussing the Philosopher's Stone, Hogwarts Professor Quirinus Quirrell, Lord Voldemort, and of course, Harry Potter. Quirinus Quirrell was an English half-blood wizard born sometime in the 1960s. When he was of age, he began attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, at which point he was sorted into Ravenclaw House. Quirrell was a highly unusual and delicate, but talented student that was teased profusely at school, making the anxious Quirrell even more anxious. Not long after graduating himself, a young Quirrell was able to secure a job as the Muggle Studies professor at Hogwarts. However, in the year 1990, Quirrell took a year-long sabbatical. He told his peers that the sabbatical was an opportunity for him to gain first-hand experience in the field, where in reality his objective was to find Lord Voldemort, exceedingly curious about what had happened to the Dark Lord who tyrannized the wizarding world for years on end. However, this trip changed Quirrell. In fact, it destroyed him. And when Quirrell returned to Hogwarts School after traveling, the other professors seemed to notice that he wasn't quite the same. Hagrid recounts Quirrell's nature after returning home from his travels. Oh yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. After returning home from his trip, Quirrell's demeanor had changed drastically. Once an anxious but eager scholar, he returned as a nervous wreck, his hands trembling, his eyes darting around the room as if he'd expected danger at every turn. His stutter, which had previously been minor, had become far more pronounced, and it was clear to those around him that whatever he had encountered on his sabbatical had deeply affected him. But the reality was far worse than mere psychological trauma. Unbeknownst to the rest of the staff, Quirrell was no longer acting of his own volition. Lord Voldemort, weakened and desperate, had found in Quirrell an easy target, someone who could be manipulated, used, and discarded. And upon their meeting, Voldemort quickly dominated the feeble-willed professor, convincing him to assist in his quest for resurrection. Quirrell sought to find Voldemort in a bid to earn the respect of his peers, but in the process he became another one of Voldemort's pawns. Voldemort recounts his first meeting with Quirrell. A wizard, young, foolish and gullible, wandered across my path in the forest I'd made my home. Oh, he seemed the very chance I'd been dreaming of, for he was a teacher at Dumbledore's school. He was easy to bend to my will. He brought me back to this country, and after a while, I took possession of his body, to supervise him closely as he carried out my orders. After returning home from his trip, Quirrell didn't reprise his previous role of Muggle Studies professor. Instead, he had been given the coveted position of Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, a subject that had been notoriously cursed for years. And although Dumbledore, ever watchful, was wary of Quirrell's drastic transformation, he lacked concrete evidence and thus permitted the young professor to carry out his duties. And the year Quirrell assumed the role of Defense Against the Dark Arts professor coincidentally aligned with Harry Potter's first year at Hogwarts. Very early on in Harry's magical adventures, he stops at the Leaky Cauldron with Hagrid, where he has his first encounter with Quirrell. A meeting that, at the time, seemed unremarkable, but would later prove to be far more significant. A pale young man made his way forward, very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts." Potter," stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. "Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." On a first read-through, this moment wouldn't appear to be significant in the least. Harry meets his new professor, they greet each other, and they shake hands. In fact, even if we knew at this stage that Quirrell was evil, this moment would come across as fairly unremarkable. However, the key detail that cannot be overlooked in retrospect is that Harry and Quirrell made physical contact with one another. And the reason this is significant is that, towards the end of Philosopher's Stone, Harry's touch is enough to kill Quirrell. "Then kill him, fool, and be done," screeched Voldemort. Quirrell raised his hand to perform a deadly curse, but Harry, by instinct, reached up and grabbed Quirrell's face. "Ah!" Quirrell rolled off him, his face blistering too, and then Harry knew. Quirrell couldn't touch his bare skin, not without suffering terrible pain. His only chance was to keep hold of Quirrell, keep him in enough pain to stop him from doing a curse. Harry jumped to his feet, caught Quirrell by the arm, and hung on as tight as he could. Quirrell screamed and tried to throw Harry off. The pain in Harry's head was building. He couldn't see. He could only hear Quirrell's terrible shrieks and Voldemort's yells of kill him, and other voices, maybe in Harry's own head, crying, Harry, Harry. Harry's lethal touch was of course a direct result of the sacrificial protection left upon him by his mother's sacrifice. This is explained by Dumbledore. Your mother died to save you. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. He didn't realize that love as powerful as your mother's for you leaves its own mark. Not a scar, no visible sign. To have been loved so deeply, even though the person who loved us is gone, will give us some protection forever. It is in your very skin. Quirrell, full of hatred, greed, and ambition, sharing his soul with Voldemort, could not touch you for this reason. It was agony to touch a person marked by something so good. But if that's the case, why was Quirrell able to shake Harry's hand earlier on, when later his touch alone was enough to kill him? What's the deal? The answer, put quite succinctly, is that Quirrell, though following Voldemort's orders, was not yet entirely possessed by Voldemort when he shook Harry's hand in the Leaky Cauldron. If we go back before the school year began, then you'll remember that there was an attempted break-in at Gringotts, an effort to steal the Philosopher's Stone. This attempt at stealing the stone, however, was thwarted when Hagrid emptied the vault. It was only after Quirrell's attempt to steal the stone, and Voldemort's subsequent disappointment, that he decided to possess him. Quirrell mentions this to Harry himself. He does not forgive mistakes easily. When I failed to steal the stone from Gringotts, he was most displeased. He punished me, decided he would have to keep a closer watch on me. Initially, Voldemort, who was still in his weakened, spectral state, had latched onto Quirrell like a parasite, whispering in his mind, bending him to his will. However, when mere manipulation was not enough, Voldemort possessed him outright, taking control of his body, warping his will, and effectively erasing whatever remained of Quirrell's independence. Voldemort's control over him was so complete that his very essence fused with Quirrell's flesh, eventually manifesting as the grotesque, parasitic face on the back of his head. And to conceal this, Quirrell wore a turban, claiming it was a gift from an African prince in recognition of his bravery. However, this little detail is made even more confusing by the events of the films, because Quirrell is already wearing his turban when he meets Harry in the Leaky Cauldron. This is a continuity error on the film's part, as Quirrell should not have been fully possessed by Voldemort at the time of his meeting with Harry in the Leaky Cauldron. If he'd already been concealing Voldemort beneath his turban, then Harry's handshake would have burned him instantly, just as it did during their final confrontation. However, it's also worth noting that in the film, Quirrell, while wearing the turban, avoids touching Harry altogether. In the books, Quirrell isn't wearing a turban until the start of Term Feast, and Harry notices this nearly immediately. He could see the high table properly now. At the end nearest him sat Hagrid, who caught his eye and gave him the thumbs up. Harry grinned back, and there, in the centre of the high table, in a large gold chair, sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry recognised him at once from the card he'd gotten out of the chocolate frog on the train. Dumbledore's silver hair was the only thing in the whole hall that shone as brightly as the ghosts. Harry spotted Professor Quirrell too, the nervous young man from the Leaky Cauldron. He was looking very peculiar in a large purple turban. Anyway, I hope that clears up any confusion about their handshake, a question made even more confusing by the continuity error in the film. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.